As a brand new PA, I followed the Dave Ramsey style of doing money. This turned out to be a big mistake and cost me a lot of money, which was something I didn't learn until later. The reason I did this was because when I graduated PA school in 2016, there was really no one speaking to non-physician medical professionals about how to handle money or what to do with student loan debt. Most of the student loan strategy that existed out there relied upon a residency and fellowship in making it work. And as a PA that went right out into the world of clinical practice, I didn't have any of that. The only guidance I had on what to do with my student loan debt and saving and investing came from Dave Ramsey. And so what I'm going to show you today is the lesson that I learned in doing that, not with my own story, but with showing you with the actual math what it looks like for the average medical professional that is a non-physician to follow the Dave Ramsey style of money. Let's do it. Let me start off by saying I'm actually a fan of Dave Ramsey. I put this picture here of him looking like a grumpopotamus, but the reality is he helps a lot of people. And if you're someone who struggles with consumer debt, with car payments, especially credit card debt, his advice will literally change your life. I'm not negating him. He's, again, helped millions of people. But the plan can actually be very dangerous to follow if you're a medical professional with high dollar student loan debt. Now, if you know me, you know I followed the Dave Ramsey plan, and I'll tell you how my story turned out at the end. But let me show you with a sample made up Sally pharmacist what the numbers actually look like. If you're not familiar with the Ramsey plan, it starts like this: $1,000 emergency fund. Then, before you do anything else, you pay off 100% of your debt. You use the debt snowball method, not the debt avalanche method, meaning you go by smallest balance first, ignoring interest rate. And then when you're done with that, you build an emergency fund and you start investing 15% of your income in actively managed mutual funds using a financial advisor. This is the Dave Ramsey plan. And again, I like Dave Ramsey as a human. I'm not saying this by any means to negate the huge impact that he's had in the world, but just remember that his advice is made for the masses. And being a medical professional with over $100,000 of student loan debt, which you likely are if you're anything like me, you're not really on the bell curve, right? You're in the extremes of debt. And because you're in the extremes, it can be really dangerous to follow advice that's not made for people in the 95th percentile, right? For debt. It's made for people who are on the bell curve. Keep that in mind, and let's dive into the numbers. Here's an example. I've made salary like Sally as common as they come, right? Super basic situation. She's going to make $130,000 a year. She's going to have $130,000 in student loan debt. It's going to be federal, and the weighted average interest rate is 6%. Now, because she does have federal student loan debt, she has lots of options available to her besides just hurry up and pay it off. We're not even going to get into any of that. Now, she's going to graduate and start working at 29. Keep in mind that Sally's actually in a decent spot for a medical professional because a lot of us have debt to income ratios that are actually greater than 1, meaning we owe more in student loan debt than our annual income. Now, just to make things, again, like straightforward apples to apples comparison, I went ahead and made her debt to income ratio 1. She's following the Dave Ramsey plan. She's got her $1,000. And now she's going to dive into paying off this debt as quickly as possible, right? You don't see the inside of a restaurant until it's done. So her take-home pay will be about $7,150, and assuming that she's able to live really frugally, right? She's willing to secure some type of low living expenses. She's really cautious in what she does in terms of car. She's able to actually allocate $2,500 per month to aggressively paying off her student loan debt, which is a pretty big cash outflow, right? And realistically, that's almost a third of her paycheck, actually a little bit more. And so huge cash outflow, but she's going to be aggressive. She's going to stick with this Dave Ramsey plan. And so this is what it looks like. Because she is so aggressive with this $2,500 a month student loan payment, she's actually able to become totally debt-free in 5 years, which is incredible, right? And I think anybody sitting on the sidelines, watching a pharmacist pay off all their student loan debt in 5 years flat would be cheering for them, right? That's incredible because reality says most people don't do this. Most people don't have that level of discipline and consistency, right? It's one thing to have that level of discipline for 6 months. Is another thing to execute that for 5 years. She did this for 5 years. And so she gets to go and she does her debt free scream and all those things. It's exciting, right? And she drops her total interest. So she saves some money by doing it this way. She drops her total interest paid down to 20,000, which is really pretty low for what most medical professionals pay in interest on their student loan payoff plan. Now it's been 5 years. She's still making 130K. All right. She's student loan debt free. Hallelujah. And now we're 34. So she's going to quickly do her emergency fund. She's got that. And now she's going to start investing 15% of her income in the exact way described as the plan, right? Here's what this looks like. This is an internal calculator that we use sometimes that I built out that's very simple and just shows based on your annual income, based on replacing 80% of your gross income in the future, and an inflation rate of 2.5%, pretty modest. What kind of numbers are we looking at? This is again salary. She makes 130. She's 34 now. She's just starting. Her current investment balance is zero. Going to start doing that 15% of her income, which puts her at 19,500. When you ignore inflation, you might say, oh, she needs 2.6. But when you go ahead and actually factor in a 2.5% inflation rate, which is again pretty modest, she actually needs somewhere in the mid 5 million range in order to retire at 65 or 67, right? The standard retirement age. And unfortunately, this current plan actually projects that she'll have only $2.6 million. And so she ends up with a little over 50% of what she actually needs by following this plan. And the problem is really twofold. One piece is that she's so late to the game, right? Because even though she graduated as a pharmacist and had this great six-figure income at 29, all of her money was allocated towards student loan debt. Nothing was allocated towards investing. And so she delayed her start date by yet another 5 years. I think in comparison to the folks who did an undergraduate degree only and started at 22, or did a trade school and started at 19, right? They already have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested. Sally is just getting started. Well, it gets worse, right? So she's projected to be very, very short of what she would need for an inflation adjusted retirement goal. There's extra pieces of the advice that kind of put the nail in the coffin, so to speak. One piece is to always use a financial advisor, which for some folks may be absolutely worthwhile, but especially for people with a very simple portfolio just getting started, paying this industry standard 1% assets under management fee may not bring you the value that exceeds the cost, right? For people with multi-million dollar portfolios who are landing the plane and figuring out distribution strategies, different conversation. In addition, the advice is to use actively managed mutual funds, meaning the fund's internal operating expenses are going to exceed 1%, or the expense ratio will exceed 1%. Some of these also have front load fees, back load fees. I didn't even get into all of that. But the recommendation is to really stack the investing fees. And so if you look at what the actual after fee balance looks like, assuming the same pre-fee returns, you actually lose almost another $1 million that way. And so what really happens is that she needed 5.5 million. She followed the plan. She executed. Now she has 1.7. Okay? This is why it's so important that you think about the system that you implement before you implement it. Because this isn't really fair, right? Sally is actually a very disciplined person, as evidenced by her ability to execute a very long-term financial plan with consistency. Tricky thing is, the advice put her in a spot where now she's millions of dollars short of where she needs to be from a standard retirement. Did she save some money on student loans? Of course. Was it worth the opportunity cost of not investing for 5 years? Well, you tell me, right? Things look a little dicey on the back end. Keep in mind, again, the advice is designed for the masses, for the people in the middle of the bell curve. You're not the people in the middle of the bell curve, right? For most medical professionals, the vast majority of your debt is student loan debt. And the vast majority of that is federal, which means you also have options on the table like public service loan forgiveness, taxable loan forgiveness, state-based forgiveness programs, in addition to saying, I'm just going to pay it off. And so before you decide this is the way to go, make sure you run your back end numbers. Don't put blinders on and full force attack your student loan debt without recognizing the situation you're creating for yourself at the end of that journey. Now, this may seem hypocritical because I'm telling you, hey, executing this Dave Ramsey plan may not be the best thing for you, while I simultaneously told you I executed the Dave Ramsey plan, right? And my situation turned out okay. I became an early millionaire, invested really heavily, and ended up creating a lot of options, freedom and flexibility for myself clinically as a result. However, one thing and one thing only saved me. Well, we'll make it two. The first thing is I actually did my Dave Ramsey plan student loan payoff in 16 months. So in the example, I had Sally putting $2,500 a month to student loan debt and living off of the income of her single job, very frugally, but of her single job. My situation was different. I decided to increase work hours substantially, and my husband and I had two incomes but opted to live off of $35,000 a year, which at the time was my husband's income. I was able to allocate 100% of my income as a PA towards student loans, but I didn't just stop there. I got 4 or 5 per diem jobs, stacked that income on top of my full-time income, and that's how I shrunk my Dave Ramsey plan to 16 months. That was one piece of my saving grace. The other piece of my saving grace was that I was willing to have a very high investing rate on the back end. So an investing rate is, in simple terms, the percent of your total income for the year that you allocate into investments across all accounts. Most medical professionals should never drop below 20%. It's very common, unfortunately, to see medical professionals investing 5 to 10%, but most should never drop below 20%. For years, my husband and I have had an investing rate above 50% of our income, meaning of all the income we take into our home, about 50% gets invested. We've done this consistently year after year after year, after having kids, with our house, all of it. And we've designed our life to create some delayed gratification so that we were able to facilitate such a high investing rate. If you know, I don't ever want to invest 50% of my income, well, then you better be really careful executing this plan, because the delay in starting you investing is one of the keys to making it so hard on the back end. As you think about what your student loan plan should be, you have to also think about what your investing plan is. Making one plan in isolation of the other is one of the biggest money mistakes medical professionals make.